Hello everyone, today we're going to create this super cool circuit animation which I see a lot in explainer videos, and to create it it's a very simple process. It's much simpler than it looks like, but there is something you must know before creating this kind of animations. So let's get started. Alright, so first let's start by creating our first composition. We can call it a master comp. We can work in a full HD format, and let's set the duration to 15 seconds and the color for the background in black. Now let's open up the action save grid and start creating our first line. First, make sure to turn off the fill color and set the color for the stroke in white and the width to 5. Now let's click once here, hold down the shift key and click once here. Let's select this layer and align it using the align tool. Now let's create the smaller shape that needs to be animated along this line. For this we can open up this layer and its contents and duplicate the shape we already have here. For this, let's select this shape and hit Ctrl D or Command D on Mac to duplicate it. Now let's open up this shape, open the stroke and set the width to 10 for now. And now let's shorten this line. And for this, we can use a trim path effect. So make sure you are selecting shape 2. Then go to add and add a trim path effect. Open up the trim path and adjust the end property. Let's set it to 10 for now. And now let's make this little shape move, and we can do it by animating the offset property. So let's make sure we are at the beginning of the animation and set the first keyframe for the offset property. Now let's move to second number 4 and make the offset make one full rotation. Let's see how that looks. Alright, and now let's talk about the problem you can counter while creating this kind of animations. For now, don't do it with me, I just want to show you and then we will do it together. So let's say I want to change the shape of this path. Let's say I want to add some points around here and change this path to be more interesting. But as you can see, right now I changed only the path of the second shape, which is the small short one. And now I need to adjust the first shape as well to be matched with the shape of the small one. As you understand, this is a very long process and it can take a lot of times, especially if you want to create some much interesting shapes for your paths, and if you have a lot of these paths. So I'll press right now Ctrl Z a few times until I get back to normal, and now I'll show you how we can fix this problem. So the secret is we need to parent the paths of these two shapes. For this, let's open up the path for the second shape and now open the path for the first shape as well. And all we have to do is we need to parent the path of the second shape to the first one, like this. And now we can easily select this layer and create some nice variation for this path, and both of the paths will be adjusted together, and with this we're solved the problem we had before. So this is the big secret, and now you know this as well. And let's make it something interesting together. So I'll delete all the points I created, and right now grab your mouses and let's create something awesome. So first let's open the proportional grid so we can work more precisely. And now create a few points around this area right here. Now hold down the Alt or the Options key on Mac, and while you're holding the Alt key, select both of these points and bring them up like this, and then adjust them according to the grid. Now let's create additional points here in this area as well. So create 4 points. Let's make this one a bit smaller. Don't forget to hold down the Alt key and then select the points you need and adjust them as you like. Alright, and now I'll turn off the grid, all the grids, and let's see how that looks. Awesome. The next thing I want to teach you is how you can round the corners of your path or of your lines. It's very simple, so all you have to do is to make sure you're selecting contents, which means you selected both of the shapes, and then add a rounder corners effect. And now if I'll zoom in, you can see we already have a nice round corner here, but you can increase it while adjusting the radius of the effect. Let's set it for 20 for now. Awesome. And now let's deal with the smaller shape that we have here. As you can see, at the end and the beginning of the shape, it's straight. So let's round it as well. For this, let's open up the shape and let's go to the stroke of this shape and make sure we set the line cap to round cap. As you can see, we have now rounded ends for this shape. Let's make the line joint also to round joint. Great. Now we can close this shape and the contents and continue creating another variations for the lines. Alright, so first we can select the first shape and duplicate it using Ctrl D or Command D on Mac, and now we can bring this layer down a bit using the arrow keys on the keyboard. And now let's select one of the points to select this path, and now hold down the Alt key and select these 2 points to change the shape of this path a little bit. Let's continue doing this until we get some nice shape for this path. Alright, feel free to create your own shape for this path as you like. Try to make some variations when the two of the lines get crossed together to create a bit interesting look. And now I want to teach you something very important while creating this kind of animations. So let's say in the future I would love to change the stroke of the lines, to not do it manually on each layer. We can actually parent the stroke widths of the two of the shapes we have here together. I'll show you what I mean. First, let's make sure no layer is selected and use the search bar to search for the stroke width. Now we see all the stroke width properties that we have on these layers. And now all we need to do is we need to parent the stroke width for the second shape from this layer to this layer, and do the same for the first shape, like this. Now if I'll zoom in a bit, you will see that we can actually control the stroke width for both of the layers from one layer, which is the first layer. So I'll set it to 2. Yeah, so it's very comfortable using this and controlling all the layers with using the one layer only. Alright, so now we can close the search bar and duplicate the second shape. Let's set the preview screen to fit, and now let's bring this up and adjust the path of this shape as well. So let's create something interesting. Let's see how it looks. Alright, I think it looks great. And now I want to remind you that you can add additional points on the path and adjust it and create some more interesting look if you need. Let me just bring this to the right a little bit. Yeah, I think it looks great. Awesome. And now I want to show you how you can make this shape a little bit more interesting, to have different variations if you want. So first I will open up the trim path effect for this shape and set the end property to 5 to make it much shorter. And now I'll go to the stroke and open the taper property, and I set the start length to 100, which will make it look a little bit more interesting like this. Yeah, and now let's make something interesting with this shape as well. So let me close all these properties for this layer. And now let's open up this one, which is the long one. And for this one, we can open out the stroke and add dashes for this shape. Now we can set the dash amount to 50, and it will make this shape be pointed, something like this. So yeah, keep that in mind, that you can create different variations for your design. Alright, so now let's bring the preview screen back to fit and continue duplicating the shapes and creating a much more interesting scene. Alright, so now I want to duplicate this one. I'll bring this up and I'll move this layer around here above all this. Let's change the shape of this path to get a little bit more interesting look. And for this one, I can go to the trim path and I'll shorten the end property as well to have a shorter shape. And now I want to remind you that if you want to change the stroke width for your design, just select the first layer and search for stroke in the search bar and adjust the stroke width for this layer, and the rest of the layers will be adjusted according to the first one. Alright, I think it looks awesome and we can move on. Okay, so first let's make the animation a bit more interesting. So make sure you're not selecting any layer and press the U key to see all the keyframes for this layer. And now select all these keyframes and right click and go to Keyframe Assistant and convert these keyframes to Easy Ease keyframes, and it will look a little bit more natural. And now we're done with the hard part, and all we need to do to create the entire scene, we can select all these layers and pre-compose them all together. Make sure both are selected and hit OK. Now let's activate the collapse function. If you don't see this function, click here This will make sure that the layers will be in the highest quality in case we want to scale this layer in the future. All right, and now let's bring up the safe action grid, select the selection tool and move this layer to the center like this. Now let's duplicate this layer and flip it to create a little bit more interesting look. We can actually flip it vertical as well. Right, I think it looks better. Yeah, and now we can duplicate it one more time and bring up the rotation property and set the rotation to -90, and we can align this layer to the center of the composition, and let's bring it down here so it will start from the center. Now we can duplicate this layer and press R to rotate this layer to the opposite side. So let's write down 90 and bring this layer down here. Great, and now we have some nice circuit animation going on here. And now to control the scale of all the layers, we can create a new null object and parent all these precomps to the null object and scale all the precomps at once using the null. I'll set it to 65. I think it looks great. And now let's add a logo for your design. For this, let's press Ctrl or Command N to create a new composition. We can call it logo. Let's set the width and the height to 500, and here you can add any logo that you want or any other graphic that you have. I'll just scale it down, and now let's go back to the master comp and add the logo comp right above all the layers, and I'll scale this down a bit. Yeah, 50, I think it looks great. Now as you can see, we can see the shapes, the small shapes popping out behind the logo, and actually I don't want it. So let's fix this real quick. For this we need to enter the lines comp, press U to see all the keyframes, and let's change the first keyframes for all the layers, let's say to -40. So the lines will start from the right side, so we can't see it in the left side. Let's change it for all the layers and see how that looks. All right, let's change the second layers for all the layers as well to -40. Great, it looks awesome. And now as you can see, we can see the lines at the beginning of the animations at this area. To avoid this, we can use the null object to scale all the precomps at once. Let's scale it to 75%. Yeah, and now let's create an animation for the logo comp. So for this we can use a scale property, and let's convert the keyframes to easy ease, and using the speed graph editor, let's adjust the velocity for this animation to have a little bit more interesting animation. Great, I think it looks nice. And now let's turn off the grid and add a glow effect to the precomps to have a little bit more interesting look for the scene. So I'll set the glow radius to 50, and now let's copy the glow effect from this precomp and paste it on the rest of the precomps like this. Great, and we can finish with adding a stroke for the logo comp to make it look a little bit more interesting. Great, and with this we have finished the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys.